Criminally underrated. Yeah, I know that's quite a clickbait, okay? And you are here, so it works. So thank you for joining me. So why is it a clickbait? It is not just an ordinary clickbait, okay? Because I think this IEM, which I have in my hand right now, deserve quite a lot more recognition and hype, okay? So let me introduce to you this IEM from Rose Technics, or the sub-brand under the sub-brand of Lightyear, Star City 5 Pro. So the full name is Rose Technics Lightyear Star City 5 Pro. Quite a mouthful, okay? So what I'm gonna refer this IEM for the rest of this video will be just SC5. Okay, so let's just have a look at the price and the packaging for this SC5. As you can see here, all right, in AliExpress, you can get this directly from Rose Technics store, priced at 74 US dollar. And what you're gonna get is, of course, this box itself, the IEM here, okay, already assembled like this, and some carrying case here with some silicone tips, okay, special kind of silicone tips, and this free KT dongle, all right. So you might have seen some of my review covering this KT dongle, but pretty much that is pretty much just an additional free thing that comes together with this IEM. So what's the construction of this SC5 then? Let's just have a look here at the configuration itself. All right. So this is essentially a hybrid, a custom DD, dynamic driver, with two balanced armature. And in fact, if we were to look at the configuration here quickly, let's just have a look. Let me just show you some of the impressive technology for this SC5. Okay, as you can see there, right, the segmentation of this IEM, it is kind of complex for something which is priced at 74 US dollar. The build itself, I must say that the resin feels premium. All right, the metal faceplate here, which is pretty much a semi-open with an opening here. All right, so it has this kind of configuration which kind of like I say, impressive. Okay, and when we look at the rest of the configuration, it is essentially rated at 24 ohm, pretty much a very fair and very normal kind of impedance rating with 104 dB of sensitivity. Okay, so let's just have a closer look. All right, the wear factor for this SC5 is pretty much, I would say, comfortable because of the resin. It is lightweight enough, and once worn, okay, I was able to wear it for quite a while without any element of fatigue. All right, I do not feel any kind of discomfort or anything like that. But I must admit, due to the design of the IEM itself, which is kind of like semi-open, I believe, it does not offer that much of isolation at all. And let's just have a look at the cable itself. The cable is a 6N OCC, which is kind of like really good, considering that this is still under 100 US dollar. And the braiding, which is a twist braid and everything, is flexible enough. I really love it. Simple, all right? No nonsense kind of design. So all in all, physically, the presentation of this SC5 is already very good, value for money for something which is priced at 74 US dollar. So why is it criminally underrated? All right, so let me just share with you some of my findings on this SC5 here. Out of the box, the first time when I received it some time ago, almost 1 month ago, in fact, I have been listening to this SC5 since the very beginning, and I was already very impressed from the get-go, because this SC5 offers the sort of sound signature, sound tuning, which is easy for me to love. The kind of sound signature which is so familiar to me. All right, let me just put it this way. Probably most of you would have known that I love Tanjim Zero, okay? I love Final Audio A5000. I love Hidis MP145, okay? I love Etimotic ER2XR, right? The kind of tuning which is, I consider as being fairly balanced between being analytical and musical. So such is the case for this SC5. But then again, you can say that, there's so many IEM in the market nowadays, the standard being so high, really high, with everything coming up, especially since for the last 2 years. How does this SC5 compete? So let's just put it this way. Look at first how it presents the dynamic itself. This thing is super fluent, okay, graceful with the way it handles the dynamic transient, the way it flows, from anywhere from upper frequency, mid-range to the lower frequency. The way it handles the dynamic itself does not suggest that this thing is priced at 74. It is more like something I would consider as the kind of sound performance you would expect from 300 US dollar IEM. I am not joking. This is for real, okay? You have to listen to this and appreciate it. And let me just put it this way. All right. When I listen to certain type of IEM, I always look for first the timbre itself. Okay. The timbre for this SC5 is surprisingly very well defined. You know, it is amply analog. It is amply organic. It does not sound digital at all. It does not offer any kind of offensive edge to the sound itself, which suggests that, you know, there's a maturity to the way it is being tuned. Okay, so that is definitely something which I can appreciate. Especially, it is very important if you are into the sort of music which span from any type of genre, anything from classical, rock, metal, jazz, okay, even electronic, modern music, you name it, this SC5 can handle all of them. Okay, and let's talk about driving it first. Okay, for example, I was able already to get the kind of sound performance which I consider as satisfactory straight out from this phone of mine, which is Sony Xperia 1 Mark IV. Okay, but it does scale really well with power. So for the most part, I have been listening to this SC5 with this favorite dongle of mine, which is Hebe FC6, and also this Sony PCM D100 here, and also Centron Backport HD here, my long-time favorite. And last but not least, quite a bit of time also on this Questal M12i. All of them exhibit the kind of synergy which I would consider as superb, you know. Superb because there's great balance between being analytical and musical at the same time. So let's talk about the upper frequency itself. See, I must admit, when it comes to the upper frequency, I will be getting a bit more of resolution and extension from the likes of Final Audio A5000 or even Hidis MP145, or even some other, you know, upper tier, especially Bitquest Win or Bitquest Winter. But it does not mean that the roll-off itself is something which I consider as a deal breaker, because it extends really well. It offers a good amount of macro detail for the treble, but never offensive. The energy, the attack itself is definitely very well, you know, defined to be smooth and mature. So there's a strong element of macro detail there, but just a bit of micro detail. And micro detail is important for the decay stage. So what I'm trying to say is that, you know, the only shortcoming which I would see from this SC5 when it comes to the upper frequency is just the decay state. It extends not as far as how I would prefer it. But hey, we are talking about 74 US dollar I am here. The key thing is that the way it presents the treble itself is never offensive. It is always smooth, creeps at the same time, very well balanced between those two. And then I am still hearing proper amount of macro detail. Okay, and let's talk about the mid-range itself. Now, this is perhaps one of the best part. It is super transparent. Transparent by means is that when I listen to certain type of instrument, so I listen from anything from, you know, classical, Vivaldi, Beethoven, piano, violin, all the way to rock, metal, or even electronic music. You know, the sort of sound which I am getting is something which I consider as naturally realistic. There's no hint of coloration there. Okay, you know, the attack itself, it is crisp, it is solid, it is engaging, but never a hint of coloration to the sound spectrum itself. I feel that, you know, there's a quite good amount of transparency there being projected, and also the decay itself. So when we talk about transparency, it also applies to vocal. You name it, any type of male or female vocal, be it the low type of contralto or high pitch soprano, or even male vocal or baritone or high pitch falsetto, this SC5 was able to emit truthfully to the way it was intended to sound like. Okay, so which means that Alison Krauss sounds like Alison Krauss without any hint of warming. So does Diana Krall. Okay, the texture and the definition itself remain faithful to how it was supposed to be. And then let's talk about the lower frequency. And I will just simply put it this way: if you are a Harman type of person who love Harman type of bass presentation, probably this SC5 is not for you, because the sub bass is kind of a bit subdued. The focus is a bit more on sub bass. Sorry, the focus is a bit more on mid-bass. So that is the kind of sound which I love, because the type of music that I listen to, especially rock and metal, or even technical jazz, or even certain, blues or folk music, require, this good definition of lower frequency, especially on the mid-bass rather than sub-bass. So by saying that, what I'm trying to say that the bass itself is presented being clean, tidy, fast. Okay, there's clear definition between the mid bass itself and the sub bass, and the sub bass itself will disperse, all right, a bit more subdued as compared to the current trend of harmonish kind of tuning nowadays. Okay, but you still gonna get that proper decay to the lowest frequency, especially depending on what type of partner you attach it. So for example, if I attach it using this DeckPort HD, which is known to be quite solid and quite, commanding with the lower frequency, it sounded, rich and engaging at the same time. But perhaps if I use something like a lot flatter, like this FEO BTR15, then the sub bass would appear kind of a bit roll off. So in the simplest way, I would just simply say that SC5 is not for bass head. As for technicalities, I did mention earlier that this thing is being fairly analytical as well as musical. So when I say being analytical, it resolves especially really well when it comes to macro detail, and quite good also with micro detail. Okay, so depending on which partner you attach to, you're not going to get that much of detail from this phone or anything which is under 1 BRMS, because this SC5 does scale really well with power, but I get tons of detail from this DeckPort HD or even this FC6. And when it comes to layering, separation, and everything, you can be rest assured this thing is super clean with the way it handles different layer of sound. Okay, and then sound stage, it is fairly wide and open, but I must admit when it comes to spatial projection, it does sound kind of a bit more traditional stereo rather than being holographic, because despite having that additional 2 balanced armature, surprisingly the behavior is more geared towards being traditional DD type of presentation. With so many competition, especially for the last 3 years until today, we are seeing so many great IM being released day by day, literally. And this is how SC5 compares against the rest of the competition. So this is definitely not all of them, okay? I'm just trying to squeeze, as much as possible into that particular window and focus on some of the current releases. So as you can see there, SC5 is super impressive. Like I mentioned earlier, criminally underrated. Perhaps it is not hype enough or anything like that, but without a doubt, with a total score of 88 out of 100, this is the highest ranked under 100 IEM this year so far for Andy Oderwalk at 88. Okay, the nearest competition comes from Caffeine Delcy, which I reviewed recently, and also SimGod EA500LM. So let's just talk about some of the differences between these three, especially. Okay, first and foremost, I would just simply say that, when it comes to technicalities, without a doubt, SC5 has it upper hand. Hands down, the better one among the three of them, compared against EA500LM or even Caffeine Delcy. Okay, but when it comes to the element of timbre and being musical and stuff like that, I always still say that, especially Delcy would sound a bit more musical, and also EA500LM, because this focus a bit more on being technical. But then again, it does not mean that this is less musical. It's just slightly 1 point lower than the other two, okay? And also, just for the record, Caffeine Delcy is also a lot more heavier with the lower frequency. So it is definitely more bassy. And I would even say that EA500LM is also more bassy and a bit more focused on sub bass for those two. Whereas this is focused more on mid bass. So if you are like me who love mid bass, this is a clear winner for me if I were to choose between the three of them. Okay. And you can also pause the screen and have a look. How does it compare with the rest of the competition? It is pretty much very clear to me that, with the way this SC5 is being tuned, I think this SC5 deserves quite a bit more of attention. Okay, especially if you are not following the trend of harmonious sort of tuning. This is definitely something which I would consider as value for money, the kind of sound and performance which you can expect from $300 IEM.